that cornfield calm, Midwest tone, but he's spitting facts like a dog with a bone. Lanky frame, fire-haired, eyes on the case, breaking down the game and the darkest place. Sports scores to murder boards, Hoosier logic cuts like swords. From Friday lights to chalked out lines, this redhead's brain rewrites the lines. Inside the Hoosier mind, where the stories twist and stats unwind. He's a legend in flannel, mic in hand, digging deep where few can stand. From touchdowns to crime scenes raw, he's got the truth in every draw. Yeah, step in if you dare to find what's brewing inside the Hoosier mind. He'll talk Pacers, Colts, or Colts on trial. Hoosier humor with a devilish smile. He's that redhead sleuth with a box of clues. Takes your headline, breaks the news. With every stat and every scream, he's painting portraits in your stream. Don't blink, he'll tie it tight. From game night wins to murder flight. Inside the Hoosier mind, where the facts hit hard and the lines are blind. He's a ginger ninja, smooth and slick, cracking cases play by play quick. From courtrooms to the hardwood floor, he digs for more than just the score. Tune in and don't rewind, you're deep now inside the Hoosier mind.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, as well as Gunfighter Beer Company. Military Broadcast Radio helping give veterans a voice, as well as Gunfighter Beer Company, a small business owner who is a prior, I don't want to say prior Marine. He is a Marine. He's a Marine Corps veteran out of South Carolina, does a lot of great, wonderful beer products. He's cleaning up his website a little bit, but he still has a whole lot of stuff for pretty much everybody out there. Anything that really, fancies you. And if you want a great looking beard, mine may be looking a little bit rough because of St. Patty's Day and whatnot, but nonetheless, he's the guy for you as far as great products go. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We are now officially 1 week in to free agency and whatnot, and we've already seen a whole bunch of drama happen. It's the off season. We're all starved for football, so that's to be expected. And we've seen something that, funny enough, I messaged Mike this just shortly after it happened, because if anybody who watched the show last week, Mike and I were discussing the whole Max Crosby trade to the Ravens, and because at the time we thought, okay, he's now a Raven. That's crazy how much draft capital the Raiders now have, the potential and the possibilities that they now have as a result of having all that draft capital, only for a few short hours later for that to be nullified. And now the Ravens lost their star center and Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders, and they don't have Max Crosby, but they did get Trey Hendrickson, which, if you want to consider that a kind of even trade-off as far as his production and whatnot, you definitely can. But it'll be yet to be seen, though. But we do have a lot to talk about as far as some of the big free agencies, some of the big signings, and we have a little bit of college football news as far as Big 10 Commissioner Tony Petitti actually petitioning the NCAA to not enforce tampering. But we will dive into that. Neo Vortex, hello. Appreciate you joining in. Hopefully you stay for a little bit. Hopefully you like it. If not, feel free to let me know in the comments, and we'll go from there. But let's talk into some of the big news as far as Max Crosby and the Ravens trade and whatnot, and how all of that went down. And when I first saw it, when I was first kind of reading into it, and when I was listening to some of the other shows, some of the other kind of content creators talk about this and whatnot, there was a few things brought up, and kind of the way that the Ravens were pitching it almost made it seem like, oh, well, wait a minute. That's not fair. We didn't know about this. We didn't know that he wasn't going to be ready. We didn't know that this was going to potentially be a risk or a liability. And for me, I just don't necessarily believe that. You can't sit here and tell me that as an organization, you didn't do your due diligence when you're trading away draft capital. You're trading away 2 first-round picks to get this kind of guy, that you didn't do all of your research going into it. Now, I do understand maybe being a little bit frustrated that it wasn't going to go through purely from a financial standpoint, because maybe if you do, okay, hey, maybe we have a little bit more money on the back end, maybe you have a little bit more money on the table to pay Tyler Linderbaum instead of just letting him go to the Raiders, and maybe you're able to keep him and you're able to get Trey Hendrickson out of free agency as well. So there's a lot of debate and skepticism that's tossed up in there as a result of that. And for me, you're a multi-billion dollar organization. You're trading draft capital. You can't sit here and tell me you didn't know that. Oh, well, we didn't know that he was hurt. We didn't know he was hurt that bad. What do you mean you didn't know he was hurt that bad? What do you what? You didn't do your do research? Like, hey, let's talk to him. Because again, Monday and Tuesday of last week was technically the legal tampering era, as far the legal tampering time frame of you can talk to players even though they're currently signed, they're currently with their teams for the most part. You can talk to them as far as, hey, what's the feelers looking like? How are we going to do this? What are we going to go about? And so for me, you can't sit here as the Ravens and say, "Oh no, we didn't know that this was the case." Yes, you did. You absolutely knew that he was hurt. You knew that the risk was there. You were going to potentially put that risk out there, and that's why you were trading your draft capital to potentially get him. So I don't necessarily agree that the Ravens were, blindsided by the fact of, well, we didn't know he was injured. Yes, you did. You absolutely knew he was injured. Absolutely knew he was injured. He's a stream. I appreciate that, Zimmerman. Um, but nonetheless, though, that the part that to me is the part that really throws me off. Now, I will say if I'm a Ravens fan, I'm super aggravated and super frustrated because you go from, okay, we potentially gave up 2 draft picks for Max Crosby. We have one heck of a generational player. We have an absolutely great pass rusher. But now we don't have that. We get Trey Hendrickson, we get our draft capital back, which is great. But here's the other thing that I talked about with Mike last week, if you missed the show. The defense hasn't really been the problem for the Ravens at all. Like, has not been an issue. Now, if you want to eliminate last year's defense because they just didn't end well, yeah, you could probably do that. But for the most part, no, you can't discredit what that defense has been able to do basically Lamar Jackson's entire career. He needs better pass catchers. He needs another legitimate wide receiver. Now, don't get it twisted. I like Zay Flowers. I think he's a little undersized, but as far as his speed, as far as his route running capabilities, as far as all of that, he's fantastic. And I can't discredit him for being able to do what he's able to do, but he does need a lot more help. And I know some people are going to argue, well, he has Mark Andrews. Yes, and Mark Andrews is definitely an extension of that, but we've seen Mark Andrews even falter. We've seen him, drop some easy passes that he was absolutely roasted for weeks, especially with the 2-point conversion that he just flat out dropped. So I I get where you would be happy of having a generational talent like Max Crosby, but I would also turn it into, okay, now we have an opportunity to either fix the offensive line issue that we now have of not having our star center anymore, or you could go out and get him another weapon as far as in the draft goes, as far as wide receiver, because it's a really deep college draft as far as wide receiver positions. And I guess if you really wanted to go for tight end, you could. I don't think I would necessarily spend a first round pick on it, but the more draft capital you have to be able to do that, the better. And those players are going to come cheaper, especially since you're having to pay Trey Hendrickson that type of money. So that was probably one of the biggest things that happened immediately after the show. And I was so frustrated that that ended up being the case. But looking at some of the big free agency signings that happened, though, Mike and I did talk about Malik Willis going to the Dolphins. Tyler Linderbaum obviously went to the Raiders. One though that actually followed shortly after the Tua trade that I wanted to talk about is Kyler Murray to the Vikings. And there is a point brought up of two things can be right at the same time, that maybe they don't feel JJ McCarthy is truly ready to be the franchise quarterback, and that maybe you are in a better position now if you get Kyler Murray and you still believe that he is your franchise guy. Now, for me, I don't necessarily see those two things as being true. Now, in JJ's defense, he's only played 10 games in his NFL career so far. He was hurt his entire rookie seasons. That doesn't count. And he was only able to play part of the games last year. He was able to play 10 of them. And from what we've seen, it was not pretty for his first year of starting. But technically, it was his quote unquote rookie year last year of truly being able to play and start. So, this coming season, to me, there's a lot to prove for JJ. There's a lot for him to show early on. Am I the guy for the franchise in the long run? If you're the Vikings, do you truly believe that he's the guy? And can he continue to be the guy moving forward? If not, where do you go from there? And now with Kyler, I think that opportunity and that window becomes a little bit more negotiable and a little easier. And some people might argue with me because I know there's not a lot of Kyler fans out there. I don't have anything against Kyler personally. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a huge fan of Kyler's, but I don't have anything against him. I've seen him be able to play. At minimum, he is athletic and he does have an arm. Now, where some of the biggest criticisms come from his size, his overall attitude towards the game, because we know the reports came out as far as him wanting to play video games more. And as a young guy myself, or who I think is a young guy myself, I can definitely understand and respect that of like, hey, if I'm not working, I don't necessarily want to do this. I want to play video games. I want to relax. Now, it's hard to say that as a guy who gets paid millions of dollars to throw a football, but at the end of the day, he is still a human being. It is still something that he enjoys. It's a hobby, and he wants to have that hobby. So I completely understand. Kathleen, hello. Appreciate you coming in. Ooh, from Massachusetts. Okay, up in the Northeast. Well, welcome. I appreciate you being in here. Um, so for me with Kyler and Minnesota, I think this gives Kyler the best chance to truly show who he is since he first left Oklahoma. And what I mean by that is when you look at Arizona and you look at the Cardinals for what they've been for the last few years, what weapons did he really have? He maybe got Larry Fitzgerald, kind of shortly after towards the end of his career, but not extremely long. He maybe got D Hop for a little bit there too. Um, and yes, Kathleen, this is football. I'm sorry if you're not a football fan, I apologize. And if you leave, I completely understand. Um, so yeah, that's definitely fair. It's not a lot of people's talk. I understand. Um, but when you look at Kyler and what he's had, he has not had the greatest of weapons. Now he comes into a situation, there's no pressure. He's already getting paid by Arizona, so he's taking the league minimum with Minnesota. So he's getting his money. He doesn't have to worry about that. He's in a new situation. He's with a guy who's been, rumored as a quote unquote quarterback whisperer. And if you want to make the tie of, he maybe helped revive Daniel Jones' career as far as going to Indianapolis and him potentially getting a contract with them. If you want to make the argument he was instrumental in helping Sam Darnold in his career revival because, he went from, being a backup with the San Francisco 49ers the year before with Kyle Shanahan, goes to Kevin O'Connell, fills in, goes 14-3. Now there's a little bit of an embarrassment as far as being in the playoffs goes. He gets bounced. He wasn't really able to hack it in some of the big games. That's definitely understandable. Um, and then he goes to Seattle as the starter. They pay him big money. And then lo and behold, he takes some 14-3 and wins the Super Bowl with them. So maybe this is that chance for Kyler as well, because now you have Justin Jefferson to throw to. You have Jordan Addison to throw to. You have TJ Hawkinson to throw to. And for what it's worth, again, I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of him because he's maybe a little older. He's not as young and dynamic as he used to be. You have Aaron Jones as a running back. All things you really didn't have in Arizona as they're continuing to rebuild their franchise. They've had a lot of offensive line issues for a long time. They got Marvin Harrison Jr., who, no offense to Marvin Harrison Jr., hasn't really lived up to the hype and the expectations. Now, statistically, he did pretty well. But as far as what we expected, we expected from him out of college and what he was able to do in college, it hasn't really translated over well to the NFL. And at least for me, it's kind of left me wondering. And the reason why I say that is because if you notice with some of the guys coming out of college that are touted as some of the best receivers, they get a lot of national media coverage and people talk about them. All the sports shows talk about them, all the debate shows, even the game commentators comment on him as far as, hey, look at what he's doing, look at this, look at that. Even other commentators who aren't in it, like, oh yeah, if you look at some of the rookies like Marvin Harrison Jr., we really didn't get that out of him. And I don't know if it's just he doesn't talk to the media much, if they didn't feel that it's worth talking about, or what that case may be. I truly, truly think that with Kyler going to Minnesota, now having all of that in his corner and in his back pocket, we're going to see a different Kyler Murray than what we were used to seeing in Arizona. And again, now what does all that entail? I absolutely have no idea, but I will still be interested to see what does it look like and is he able to really do anything with it, because he he had so much potential coming out from Oklahoma, and Arizona absolutely loved him, which is great. But I think the future for him is bright in Minnesota. And for JJ McCarthy, I'm not going to necessarily say it's the end, but I have a lot of skepticism with whether or not he's going to continue to be the guy moving forward. I wonder about a lot of his development. I'm not going to say injury is a key thing in his career yet, but it's coming really close as far as, he gets injured his rookie year, albeit probably not necessarily his entire fault, and then kind of in and out of injury this past year with the Vikings. So I think this is JJ McCarthy's last chance. And now who knows? It might be another one. I said it was Sam Darnold's last chance when he was with Carolina and it absolutely flopped. But again, Carolina wasn't exactly the best situation either. But it's rare we see some of these guys move on somewhere else and then even get the opportunity to start. It's one of those just kind of freak things that happen. And luckily for Sam, it happened in Minnesota. Really highlighted his and showcased his talents and the fact that he's changed, he's grown up. And then he goes to Seattle and it basically comes full circle. So maybe JJ's able to have somewhat of a similar career, maybe a little bit of a career revival if that does happen. And maybe this time, okay, I've gotten a start. I've gotten to see if Kyler is the starter day one. Maybe now I can take a step back. I can look and see, all right, this is how I used to do things. Maybe now I see things a little differently. Maybe I do things a little differently. So that was my thought on the on the JJ McCarthy and the Kyler Murray signing. Some other kind of big name signings that I was really surprised about. Kenneth Walker is with the Chiefs, and if there's ever reason to not like the Chiefs even more, it's that. Travis Kelce is coming back, which y'all can let me know what you think. I think that's kind of a hit and miss thing. He's older. He just hasn't seemed like himself for the last couple of years. I'm not going to say the distraction with Taylor Swift, because that's just the NFL, the NFL riding the Taylor Swift train to get more hype, get more views, get more money. So I'm not going to throw it in there, but purely from an on the field standpoint, it's definitely different with Travis Kelce the last couple of years, with his health, with his overall performance, all of that. But you're going to get Mahomes back. You're going to get Kelce. You still have Worthy. You still have Reed. And then you now have Kenneth Walker in the backfield, which gives him a legitimate running back there, which, don't get me wrong, as an LSU fan, having loved Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I initially loved it. It just seemed like they never truly used him the way that I thought they would. And of course, it also seems like Isaiah Pacheco, who even then he was serviceable for him, also doesn't just really seem to be the guy for them anymore. So I'm a little surprised, but I'm also a little bit annoyed because maybe the Chiefs dynasty part 2 continues with them having signed Kenneth Walker. Some other big names that I'm really surprised moved on, though. You've got Mike Evans to the 49ers. I like it. He's coming off of injury. He's one of the few guys that can actually stay healthy for a good long time. It gives Brock Purdy another legitimate weapon. But the 49ers have a lot of questions because a lot of their guys are older. A lot of their guys are overpaid. A lot of their guys do have a lot of injuries. And what does that team look like? And what does it look like long term with Brock Purdy there? And can Brock Purdy prove that he's the guy as he does it? I'm trying to find something the other day. You have Travis Etienne, who goes to the Saints, and supposedly, if I remember reading correctly, Alvin Kamara is traded to the Broncos. Let me make sure that was actually true and not just something from like NFL memes. Uh, let's see. Mm. All these places want me to pay for their news articles. No, thank you. Uh, okay, so maybe not. Maybe that was just a maybe that was just an NFL meme thing. Um, 'Cause I know the Broncos did get Jalen Waddle. They got him earlier today, and that's just Miami continuing to unload a lot of contracts and whatnot. Which again is kind of surprising considering you brought Malik Willis in. And this is where I kind of feel bad for Malik because not only are you getting an opportunity to start again, and at one point I thought, okay, you have a little bit of a better shot now because you're in a better place than you were with the Titans when the Titans first drafted you. And you go to Green Bay, you fill in really well. And now, but who knows? Jeff Halfley is the new head coach. He was the Packers defensive coordinator when Malik Willis was there. So he's been used to having to do more with, and a lot of people may take this the wrong way, more with less because the Packers have a lot of good wide receivers. Now they just lost one to the Patriots and Romeo Dobbs. Um, but I will be interested to see what is Malik Willis able to do with Miami now that Jalen Waddle has gone to Denver. And honestly, it feels like Denver is trying to go all in um, to win a Super Bowl right now, especially with Sean Payton. It seems like they're aggressive. The defense was absolutely phenomenal last year. Offensively, they had some injuries that ultimately ended up derailing them, such as the Bo Nix thing. But heck, even with Jarrett Stidham leading the way, they were still able to just barely lose the Patriots by 3. Now, if anybody who knows the show and watches me for a long time, I hate, quote unquote, good losses or just barely losses. A loss is a loss. But for what it's worth, considering what they had, that's not exactly the worst thing. To only end up losing by 3, even with your backup quarterback playing. Now, the Super Bowl would have been an entirely different story, but nonetheless, though, that's pretty solid for them to be able to get Jalen Waddle and another weapon for Bo Nix to be able to throw to. And some of the other kind of big names that ended up getting signed so far throughout free agency, Bradley Chubb ends up going to the Bills, so the Bills kind of bolster that pass rush. The Jets get a star cornerback who was known for being a ball hawk uh, last year, and that's Nashawn Wright. He goes to the Jets. Kind of feel bad for him because don't know what the Jets are going to look like. Probably not the greatest, but we'll see. The Jets also get Demario Davis while he's 37. He's been solid for a really long time, and he should do fairly well. We'll kind of see how that ultimately ends up uh, panning out for him, but should do pretty well. Looking at some of the other free agency signings, none of them really do, I would say, justice. Kevin Byard goes to the Patriots, a little bit older, but again, has been a solid safety for the last couple of years for the Bears. Um, Blankenship goes to the Texans. That's a little bit of surprise. I'm really surprised Philly even let him go. I kind of expected them to maybe fight a little bit harder. And the Bills also get CJ Gardner Johnson. For the Bills, and he's been instrumental. It seems like every team he's been on, especially on the defensive side of the ball, he has helped elevate that team by quite a bit. Um, and then looking at some of the best available free agency still, according to NFLs.com's 101 best free agents, some of the top ones that are left, you have Juwan Jennings, who I'm kind of surprised he's not signed. I know there's a little bit of some off the field issues that people are kind of worried about with him, but I'm still surprised that he's not signed currently. It has Calais Campbell, but he's 40. He turns 40 on September 1st. Maybe somebody tries to kick the tires on him. I mean, he's been literally everywhere. There's supposedly no word on whether or not he will retire. But I don't see a whole lot of people going after him unless they lose somebody in like training camp or preseason. I think he might end up staying a free agent. Joey Bosa, also a free agent currently. Kirk Cousins is technically a free agent, but he's 38. He looked fairly decent, especially in the back half of the year, coming off of the Achilles injury. But again, who is willing to take the risk to have Kirk Cousins be their starter? Who knows? Maybe a return to Minnesota. Who knows? Because hey, with Minnesota and the injury riddled quarterbacks, or even with Indy, you definitely need a good backup quarterback on your roster. Um, AJ Espena, I feel like he's pretty solid as far as an edge rusher goes. I'm kind of surprised he's a free agent. Stephon Diggs is a free agent. Apparently, according to this, he would actually be ranked higher as a short-term fit if there wasn't a legal issue. Now, I did hear a rumor as early as last week, but I haven't heard anything since that if the legal matter is resolved, that the Patriots would actually be open to re-signing him again. Now, I don't know if that feeling would be mutual as a result of that or not, but it would be something to kind of keep an eye on if he would want to return back since he does have a connection with Drake May. They are in need of a wide receiver. They kind of missed out on Mike Evans. They also apparently have not gotten the AJ Brown deal that they wanted. So Stephon might be another option as long as the legal trouble does not interfere with his ability to play the game. This one kind of makes me laugh, and for anybody who watches the show quite a bit or has listened to me before, I am not an Aaron Rodgers fan by any stretch of the imagination. They have him at 56, um, and it has here he'd help a team more as a high-octane backup. As a starter, he finished 31st out of 33 qualified passers in success rate. When under pressure, he fell to last place in that category by a huge margin. The greatness comes out in flashes, but it's hard to anchor as a season on. And that is true. And it's one of those, and I will give Aaron a little bit of defense, which is something I almost never do, of he did have to deal with another diva personality like himself in DK Metcalf. I was really surprised that once they got DK that they traded George Pickens away because I was not expecting that to happen at all. I completely expected them, okay, now they have a major wide receiver tandem duo for him to throw to. Like, this is going to be a really dangerous Pittsburgh offense. And they just decided to stick with DK, which I get, but I also it makes me ask a lot of questions. I mean, a lot of questions. But I do agree. He's 42 years old. He's pulling the Brett Favre thing of, I want to retire. I don't want to retire. At least Brett was still who Brett was. He was a gunslinger all the way to the end. Aaron, definitely, you can tell the age has not only caught up with him. He's not as mobile as he used to be, maybe because of the injury, maybe because of age. Who knows? He's not the same Aaron Rodgers as he was. And honestly and truthfully, I don't expect him to lead a team very far, even if he does sign with somewhere. But again, the biggest question is who would he sign with if he does, and who wants to potentially deal with that? Because the biggest thing that's going to be a factor is whether or not he's going to be a starter. And I don't necessarily think he will unless somebody gets hurt. I think if he wants to continue playing, he would have to potentially be okay with being a backup once again. And I know that's going to hurt his ego. I know that's going to hurt who he is, but that's just the reality of the situation. And Debo Samuel is still a free agent. This one is a little weird because of he goes to Washington. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of hope. And he did kind of look like himself last year, but not as much as I think Washington was hoping for, which is why I think they let him walk. And again, there's a lot of questions as far as, okay, do you just want the long-term contract? Like, what are you wanting out of this for us to really make the decision to sign you or not? So a little bit surprised, but also a little bit not. Hassan Reddick is also a free agent, but again, kind of some issues ever since he left Philly, traded to the Jets, didn't really want to play. There was issues there. If I remember right, he got traded to the Cardinals, kind of played. Then he went to Tampa, didn't really do a whole lot for Tampa this past season. So I'm not really surprised he's there. Cameron Jordan, 37 years old. I mean, he's still been great. He's finally been released from the Saints and testing free agency for the first time in his career. But he's 37 again. I don't expect a whole lot of people to go crazy as far as getting an older pass rusher. I mean, who knows? Somebody might take a chance on him, like if there's an injury or something like that. But don't necessarily see it. Darren Waller is on here, but apparently he was really good with the Dolphins last year when it came to scoring in the end zone and whatnot. But again, it does make you wonder. This guy was retired and then decided to come out of retirement. So where is his head at in this? David Njoku, who I think should be a little bit better and a little bit higher up on here. Now I know he's 30. He doesn't have that much time potentially left. But I am kind of surprised that he's not only a free agent, but he hasn't been signed significantly sooner. And Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent. He's ranked number 96 out of 101. And apparently there was even whispers that Jimmy G might run the show before Stafford returned, which is pretty good. But again, I think for Jimmy G, he's also kind of at that point. It would have to be the right situation, the right scenario, and just the right fit for him to, I would say, truly want to be in it and truly want to do it. But that's just me personally. But that is some of the NFL free agency and whatnot. The next topic I wanted to discuss is Tony Petitti apparently petitioned to the NCAA that he does not want them to enforce the tampering rules. And at first, when I heard this, I'm like, okay, you're not really making yourself look great when you say that, because now it makes it seem like, oh, we're doing the tampering. No. Don't worry about that. Don't look over here. Just worry about what you guys are doing over there. And it really made me question, okay, why do you not want them to do the tamper? And then when I really sat down and I listened to it, and I kind of listened to a couple of other guys break down the segment, it did start to make sense. And here is part of their argument, and then as well as my own. Part of their argument was, if you do enforce it and you go down the spider web of going through everybody that has done any type of tampering, especially in today's college football, they said there would only be 4 coaches that would be excluded from tampering: the 3 service academy coaches of Army, Air Force, and Navy, and Dabo Sweeney, because the dude hardly ever uses the transfer portal. And one of the few times that he does to go get a linebacker in Forelli, there's wholehearted tampering, and he loses the star linebacker that he went into the portal one of the few times to go get, much to the dismay of a lot of Clemson fans who would probably want him to tamper. He's one of the few coaches that is innocent of tampering. And that was one of the first things they mentioned, of the ultimate ramifications across the entire sport against all your coaches, against all these programs, if you do that. Now, the other thing that would be a really big question is, what would the punishment be as far as if you enforce the tampering? There's talks of suspending games. There was supposedly talks of like 20% of the overall team's athletic budget being taken out, which that's a lot of money. And I would say for some of these smaller schools who are maybe trying to go all in on a big piece guy, to just say, hey, we got somebody, maybe we can get another booster, maybe we can get some advertisement, maybe we can get more eyes in the game. That's a lot of money to lose. And the other thing that they brought up is, for some of these kids who are using NIL and who are using the transfer portal to either better their career, just overall earn them more money, whatever the case may be, at what point is it considered tampering? And 2, at what point are you able to say, and are these individuals, these commissioners, coaches, whoever the case may be, at what point are you able to basically put yourself or put a wall in front of that player who wants to go out and earn more money, who wants to go out and better themselves? At what point are you able to put your foot down and say, no, I'm going to stop you from being able to make more money? And realistically, I don't know if they're going to be able to without some type of a lawsuit. And it was one of the things that Urban Meyer talked about when they were talking about the change with college football of you can implement a lot of these rules. You can do a lot of the things. You can have a lot of this stuff set up, but there's going to be a judge somewhere. There's going to be somebody somewhere that argues back against it, and you're going to get sued. And then you're just basically back to the drawing board to square one. Now there is talks that um, if it can be passed by Congress, like bipartisanly passed by Congress, it might be able to save football with the antitrust litigations. But there's no guarantee to that. And there's no guarantee that it'll even pass. According to them, they think it would pass the House, but they do not believe that it would pass the Senate at all. That's one of the few things they think would maybe help relegate this and maybe help save quote unquote college football as a result of doing it. One of the other things they had mentioned could be an argument. And I guess one of the big things that Tony Petitti argued with the overall setup and the rules that the NCAA has now for tampering, because the rules are there. It's just the NCAA one has no power because not everybody signs off on it. And again, it's one of those, if you punish one, you have to try to punish everybody. And like Urban Meyer said, it doesn't really make sense to punish a school retroactively after one, the coach is probably gone, any of the players involved that are gone. It makes no sense to really do that. There's no teeth behind it, and there's nothing that is really stopping, or I would say motivating these, coaches and players to just not do that. So that was one of the big things. But one of the key parts that they mentioned in this was, why not build these bylaws? The old rules that Tony Petitti was talking about, they were established in 2018. That was 8 years ago. That's almost a decade, and it's a completely different college football world now as we enter into, what is it? I think year 4, maybe even 5 of NIL being implemented. Like, this is a whole new game. It's a whole new way you have to approach college football. It's a whole new way that everything has to be done and set up. So they said, why don't they come up with the rules, come up with, okay, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to go with it. This is how we want to conduct things. We're going to pick a date for the future. And then if anything happens from that date moving forward, then you're subject to being punished. But then one of the other things that they talked about that I even mentioned on this show is the overall date system in college football is absolutely broken. The fact that you can go into the portal before the playoffs have really even started. You can go into the portal and transfer somewhere else. To me, that is nuts, because that means guys that are in the midst of a playoff run can just say, you know what, I'm out. And for some of these teams and some of these coaches, that's a really big pain in the butt, because, oh, hey, I was counting on this guy to be here for at least the entirety of the season. If you're not going to be here next year, that's something I can address in the offseason. That's something I can deal with a little bit later. But if I expect you for the entirety of our season, and if our season includes a postseason run, why are you leaving? And one of the other things they brought up, as far as making it difficult to implement any rules as far as tampering, as far as doing any of that. And this is where the idea of contracts really comes into play, is for some of these teams, they have to do it because as a front office, as an organization, whether you have a salary cap or not, of how much money do we have to spend? Who do we have on the books this year? Who are we not going to have on the books? Do we have the money to be able to do this? Do we not have the money to be able to do this? They have to know that. And it's one of those things with tampering, as bad as it is a necessary evil, because they need to know of, okay, hey, can we afford to bring this guy in? Can we go out to this guy with NIL money and say, hey man, we want to pay you like $5 million a year. We got that money. But if you don't, like, we can't actually pay them. And then you're in a whole another world of trouble. And you have a guy that either re-enters the portal, sits out, whatever the case may be. So there's a lot that goes into that. It was a lot to unpack, but it was just interesting when I heard that and when I seen it that Tony Petitti's mentioning that, because again, at first I'm thinking, why would you ever want to do that? And yet, and here we go. When they broke it down and when I really looked at it and I looked at it from that perspective, it made a lot of sense. And again, it's one of those, even as a college football as a football fan, sitting here, I'm thinking, okay, how do we get past this? Because we're at that point where unless some of these students truly organize and they have some type of a CBA, a collective bargaining agreement, and they either have, you know, voted on representation as far as, hey, we're going to have a union, we're going to have certain players, we're going to have a certain agency, um, we're going to have like some type of former player um, that's knowledgeable in this or knowledgeable in contracts to be our representation, whether it be a retired NFL player, whether it just be somebody that went through college and was great, like a college star, and then decided to come back, whether it's somebody like, Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, and I know a lot of people aren't a fan of Urban Meyer or Nick, but both of them care and love college football. So unless they get somebody like that to be their voice of, we still deserve to get paid, we still deserve to be able to have the freedom to be able to transfer should we need it. I really don't see how we can get college football to be on a better track than what it was. Don't get me wrong. I still love the product. I'm still kind of an old school college football fan of I like the geography based conferences. Still throws me off at USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon are all in the Big 10. That still throws me off to no end. At least the SEC is still somewhat geographical as they kind of expand a little bit west with Texas and Texas A&M and Mizzou and whatnot, and Oklahoma. But that just seems not as bad as like the Big 10. At least the Big 12 also, it's like, all right, you're good. And then you just have these kind of weird one-offs with West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF. But, that is what it is. But nonetheless, I hope everybody enjoyed. I enjoyed talking about this. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, or don't. Completely up to you. Appreciate MBR for being able to give me the platform to talk about this. That's Military Broadcast Radio, who helps give veterans a voice. So if you're a veteran or if you know a veteran that you feel maybe might feel better, or maybe they just want to talk to somebody and share their stories, definitely reach out to MB Radio. They can help you get the equipment. They may even ship you equipment. They will do everything that they can to make sure that your voice is heard, tell your story. For veterans, it helps tremendously just being able to get your stories out there, talk with other veterans, talk with people who maybe don't know, because somebody out there is almost always willing to listen. So definitely check them out. And if you want great beard care products for you, or if you just want anything for pretty much everybody in your family, check out Gunfighter Beard Co., owned by a Marine, small business owner, does absolutely great work, has great beard care, great stuff overall. I use this stuff all the time. Because it's St. Patrick's Day, I used his Irish Springs beard care that he had. Smells just exactly like the soap and absolutely fantastic. But appreciate everybody tuning in. This is obviously a little bit of the off season, so I may be a little bit more sporadic with my episodes up until football season starts to come back. But nonetheless, hope everybody has a great St. Patrick's Day. Hope everybody has a great time, and we will see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.